You can just imagine the yelling and screaming going on where Martha and Joe Nemechek are right now. Their son leading 72 laps en route to the victory here in New Hampshire.
You know, you can win, but that first one you never forget.
Joe is the 11th winner of the year, the 9th Chevy win in 26 events. Joe Nemechek is a first-time winner in NASCAR Winston Cup racing.
On September 19, 1999, Joe Nemechek finally scored his first Cup Series victory. The win came at New Hampshire, the track that saw Joe make his first start in the series, a full 6 years and 179 starts earlier. He'd also won a Busch Series race there, beating none other than Dale Earnhardt. Others still struggled at the track. Earlier in the '99 season, a Missouri driver qualified a strong 4th, only to lose the engine and finish 43rd. It was the first last-place finish of Tony Roper's career. Joe's win came driving for team owner Felix Sabates, whose flagship number 42 hadn't visited Victory Lane in more than 4 years. Kyle Petty was his driver that day, and though the third-generation Petty would never win again, the promise of a 4th, his 19-year-old son Adam, was already coming to fruition. 6 days after Joe's win, Adam Petty led 23 laps at Dover, the first of his own Busch Series career. But the win also came less than a month after Joe was released from his contract with Sabco Racing. One of the driver's parting gifts from Sabates was the car he drove to Victory Lane. This was certainly to the dismay of his replacement, who was so anxious to start driving the number 42 that he hoped to leave his old ride before season's end. But Sabates told Kenny Irwin Jr. to wait. After all, the 2000 season was just around the corner. But most significantly, Joe's win came 2 years after the death of his brother John Nemechek, who in 1997 died from injuries sustained in a crash during the closing laps of a Truck Series race at Homestead. Less than 3 months after that dark day, Joe's newborn son John Hunter would carry on his name. "This is for my brother John," said Joe as he crossed the stripe. "I love you." It must have been some solace then that as of that September day, John had been the last NASCAR driver to die in a race car. The mid to late 1990s were a golden age for NASCAR. Increased national exposure brought with it more corporate sponsors eager to get their brands on a car. With that came a rise in teams, and with that, more opportunities for drivers to compete on a national level. In 1999, the Brickyard 400 still drew 55 entries for 43 spots. The Busch Series race at Las Vegas pulled 53. Among these drivers were Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper. Adam Petty may truly have been the first fourth-generation athlete in professional sports. The Randleman, North Carolina driver was born into racing royalty. He was the great-grandson of Lee Petty, 3 times a Cup champion with 54 wins. He was the grandson of the King, Richard Petty, with 200 wins, 7 championships, and legions of fans. And he was the son of Kyle Petty, whose 8 wins all came driving for teams other than Petty Enterprises. Father and son were extremely close. Adam proudly called Kyle his best friend. When Adam Petty was 8, Kenny Irwin Jr. was playing varsity soccer in high school, but he had already been running quarter midget since he was 6. As a teenager, he got a taste for racing in NCCA and IMSA. His father, Kenny Sr., fielded his team in the American Challenge Series, where he ran American-built production cars on road courses. But it was in USAC open-wheel competition that Irwin truly stood out. He scored 8 wins in midgets in the 1996 championship. Another 7 wins came in sprint cars, where he was 1993's Rookie of the Year. And in 95, he was the top rookie in the Silver Crown Series, finished second in points, and took another 4 wins. By then, some were already calling this driver for Indianapolis the next Jeff Gordon. Like Petty and Irwin, Tony Roper was born into a racing family. He was the son of Dean Roper, who in 1983 qualified for his first Daytona 500 and finished 15th. 2 years later, and already 46 years old, Dean won an ARCA race of the Springfield Dirt Track, his first of 6 victories in the series. The last of these came in 1994 when Dean was 55. In nearly all his starts, Dean drove for the Mueller brothers, a Wisconsin-based team whose number 89 became one of NASCAR's most prolific part-time teams. Some of their drivers were Rodney Combs and Jim Sauter. Dean and the Muellers were still racing when Tony began to drive in 1986. He started in go-karts, then branched out into dirt racing in IMCA modifieds and late models. When his local tracks in Lebanon and Bolivar were paved, he made the transition seamlessly. This led him to compete in the American Speed Association, which visited his home track, the I-70 Speedway. Located 150 miles north of the family home in Fair Grove, it was at this track on June 28, 1992, that Roper finished fourth, the best finish of his rookie season. After 5 years in ASA, Tony Roper and his wife Michelle moved to North Carolina. He just earned a full-time ride in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, driving for ARCA veteran Bob Brevac in 1997. On June 6th of 97, Roper finished 20th in the Truck Series race at Texas, a race won by Kenny Irwin Jr. Irwin's success in USAC had earned him a ride with Jim Herrick, and the Union had already yielded another win, the same tragic Homestead race that claimed the life of John Nemechek. By now, Irwin's success had caught the eye of Robert Yates as a possible replacement for Ernie Irvin. That possibility became a reality on August 1st. In an announcement at Irwin's home track at Indy, the 27-year-old would bypass the Busch Series and drive one of the most storied cars in the field, the number 28 Texaco Haviland Ford. 1 month later, on September 6th, Irwin made his first Cup start. He'd drive a car fielded by Blair Motorsports, a team that had struggled for sponsorship all year. With the Yates engine under the hood, Irwin qualified on the outside pole. He led 12 laps and came home in 8th.
It was a good night. Robert Yates and David Blair gave me a great car tonight. We led a few laps. I'm real happy, except for how I did the pit stops.
But that's what you're here for, to learn and to race.
That's right. We got 5 races to this year and try to get ready for Daytona and get all the mistakes out of the way right now so we can go to Daytona.
At the end of the 97 season, Irwin finished 10th in Truck Series points to Roper's 18th. Irwin's first opportunity to race the 28 car came on November 23rd during NASCAR's second exhibition race in Japan.
Green is out, and Mark Martin takes a quick jump. You can see Mark there. He knows getting to the outside to get a good angle on that corner going into turn 1. Very important. Now he'll go right to the bottom. 3 wide as they head into turn 1.
That is somebody's out of that corner.
That's David Green. He's on the high side, 96. You see the 28 of Kenny Irwin. He spun out. And the 08 there of John Kendrick.
So in turn 1, they've collected 3. I think that'll bring a caution as they come around to complete lap number 1. Oh, and Kenny Irwin got all torn up in that Texaco Haviland car. That one got thrashed quick. First lap, first turn, Kenny Irwin in big trouble.
The first lap accident left Irwin in 18th. He also tried his hand at drifting.
See, that's us. That's how you do it.
In 1998, it was finally time for Adam Petty to take the wheel. Like Roper, he started out in ASA, driving a radical new paint scheme sponsored by Spree prepaid phone cards. He drive number 45, the next car in line after Lee's number 42, Richard's number 43, and Kyle's current number 44 in Winston Cup. On June 27th at the Roper family's home track, the I-70 Speedway, Adam was making just his 10th series start. In the mirror of number 45 was a rookie from California named Jimmy Johnson.
There is your leader, 17 years old, just graduated from high school. He's not mowing lawns this summer, folks. He is winning his first ASA race. Off of turn number 4, Adam Petty keeps it pointed straight. He will win the Kansas City Excitement 300.
Come on over here. What's it feel like to win the big one, man? It's like the World Series.
This is awesome. I tell you what, these guys had some bad luck early in the race and got 2 laps down and made that back up with great pit stops. I tell you what, thank the good Lord for this, man. I tell you what, he was with us all night long. And thanks Spree and all they've done for me. I tell you what, I'm shaking. I don't know what to say. This is awesome.
You going to call your dad on Spree?
I'm getting ready to call my mom right now on the Spree car. That's right.
In 1979, father Kyle won in his first ever ARCA start at Daytona, and on September 30th at Charlotte, Adam followed suit.
I think he's going to win this thing.
Final corner, here he comes, Wallace with a last turn charge, up to the outside. Final turn to the stripe, he'll not do it. Adam Petty will win the Easy Care 100 at Charlotte.
18 years old. Wow, and we got a Coca-Cola bath down here in a big way. Adam, there's his dad jumping in, Kyle, proud father. Adam Petty, grandfather, great-grandfather, father, now you. Can you describe this moment?
I'll tell you what, this means more to me than anything. You know, I lost my crew chief a couple weeks ago.
Patty Petty coming in.
I lost my crew chief a couple weeks ago, and it's been a rough couple weeks, but I'll tell you what, the good Lord's been with me. This is awesome. This is my dream. It's been my dream since a little kid to come here and race. Come to anywhere race where my dad's raced before and prove himself. I'll tell you what, I feel like crying. This is awesome.
He's a lot better race car driver than I ever thought about being. He may rival his grandfather at some point in time, but it's good to know that somebody's going to be winning some races that has the last name Petty for a long time to come.
In that same 98 season, Roper parted ways with Bob Brevak in June, then took the controls of the number 55 Icehouse Ford fielded by racing legends Tom Gloy and Bobby Rahal. On July 30th, in just his sixth start with the team, Roper finished a career-best second, following Jack Sprague to the finish line at Indianapolis Raceway Park.
Career bests tonight for Tony Roper and Lonnie Rush. Congratulations from Roper, who said, man, I feel like I won this baby. I'm second, and I'm just as proud as I can be. Tom Gloy has a very good driver in Tony Roper.
The next day was the Brickyard 400, where Irwin was one to watch in his first start at his home track. Earlier that season, he'd enjoyed the best run of his career at Atlanta, leading 113 laps and finishing fifth. But he'd fallen to just 25th in points heading to Indy, failing to finish 3 times and even missing the show at the Coca-Cola 600. He qualified a strong 4th for his first Brickyard 400 and was running 5th near the end when it all came undone.
See the 5 car going in the corner. Here comes the 28 car, and Kenny Irwin just loses control. Earnhardt got so close to him, we talked about early in the race, that he took that air off the rear spoiler, and around goes the Texaco car.
Though Irwin won his first pole in the return to Atlanta that November, and again took Rookie of the Year honors, he finished no better than 10th the rest of the year, and failed to finish 4 more times. While such struggles were once expected of rookies, Jeff Gordon's near-instant success had already changed the paradigm, and so the pressure was already on the next Jeff Gordon to step it up in 1999. It was in 99 that Tony Roper joined Adam Petty in the Busch Series, this time driving for Steve Coulter's new team, Express Motorsports. Roper had worked as a general mechanic on the team and was offered the opportunity to run a handful of races. When co-driver Derek Cope was injured at Atlanta, however, Roper took over the bulk of the schedule, starting with the spring race at Darlington. In his 20 attempts, Roper failed to qualify 4 times and failed to finish another 6.
Yeah, I'm all right. I think we had a little contact with the car on the first lap there going in the first corner, and must have cut the left rear tire down because I went into one on the second lap, and it just come around on me. Thought I felt it as I went in the corner, but with everybody else behind me, I was just a pinball.
Tony Roper will race another day.
Still, his short track experience was paying dividends. His best runs were an 8th at South Boston and a 10th at Bristol. Adam Petty faced similar struggles, driving cars fielded under Kyle Petty's PE2 team and prepared in the Richard Petty driving school shop near the Charlotte Motor Speedway. After a 6th place showing at Daytona, Petty failed to qualify the next week at Rockingham, his first of 3 DNQs. He also failed to finish 12 races, 9 due to accidents, and none were more brutal than this one at Dover.
Don't go by him here. I don't know. He turned him.
There goes Adam Petty hard into the outside wall.
And here comes the field. Oh, he got tagged hard. Mike Skinner knocked these fires. Bobby Hillin. Oh, what a mess.
Kyle Petty. Kyle, you've had a chance to talk to Adam. How's he doing?
Pretty good. He's pretty shook up. Anytime you hit at Dover, you hit hard. His ribs are sore, and he's complaining a little bit of his ribs and a little bit of his hip on the right side and his elbows. But, you know, he sits so close and he's so skinny and all that stuff. He ran a great race. He did really, really good from the beginning of the race. Hated that it ended like this, and you know, that's why we got to get him out of the Busch Series, because when you race with Busch drivers like that, sometimes that's why they're in the Busch League, because they end up wrecking people like that.
Okay, is he going to go get further update, or are you going to go with him?
I'm going to go after practice, you know what I mean, to see how he's doing and how he's feeling. But, you know, he's good enough right now. His mother went with him, and she's doing good, so we'll just go from there.
But like Roper, there was also a silver lining. Adam finished 4th at Fontana, 5th at Nazareth, and 5th again at Memphis. All this occurred during the 50th anniversary of Petty Enterprises, a season-long celebration which saw both its Cup and Truck teams sweep both wins at Martinsville in April. Unbeknownst to anyone, neither team would ever win again. In June, Adam Petty revealed his team was putting together a Cup car and planned to run 5 races in the year 2000, depending on how the '99 season went. It went well enough, as this was confirmed in November. The schedule was tentatively set to start in Texas, followed by the Coca-Cola 600 in May, the Bristol Night Race in August, Martinsville, and Homestead. Although Rookie of the Year candidates could run up to 7 races prior to their first full season, the team wavered on the possibility of adding another 2 races. This only fueled rumors of a full-time Cup season in 2001. Publicly, Adam remained committed to his second full-time season in the Busch Series, driving a new red and black scheme on his number 45. For Irwin, however, 1999 was a season to forget. The lone highlight was in his second Daytona 500, where he finished a strong 3rd behind Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt. But even this was shrouded in controversy, as he bumped teammate Dale Jarrett in turn 3, triggering a massive pileup. He made all the races, won another 2 poles, and finished 5th at Richmond, but left the season just 19th in points. As early as June, it was rumored Irwin would part ways with Yates. It was confirmed on August 11th, just after his second Brickyard 400. 10 days later came news of Joe Nemechek's release from Team Sabco. By the time of the November announcement, it had been all but confirmed that Irwin would replace him. As part of Irwin's deal with Sabco, he would run a partial 16-race schedule in the NASCAR Busch Series, driving a reversed version of his Cup Series paint scheme. One of his competitors would be Tony Roper, who had also moved on over the offseason. Roper would drive full-time for third-year Busch team Washington Irving Motorsports, named for its 2 famous team owners, retired NFL star Joe Washington and NBA Hall of Famer Julius Irving. Roper took the place of Mark Green, who in 1999 scored a single top 10 finish at Atlanta, driving the Dr. Pepper Chevrolet. On Wednesday, April 14, 1999, Kyle Petty was testing at Talladega when something strange happened. Heading down pit road, his throttle stuck, and his Hot Wheels Pontiac was out of control. The car smashed through a fence, then slammed to a stop against an infield flagpole. Petty climbed out unhurt and spoke to rider Monty Dutton. "I ran through the chain link fence and over a couple of azaleas, and I think a couple of dandelions gave their lives too," said Petty, assuring a concerned Dutton. "It was just a freak deal."
It's back to the beach for the NASCAR Busch Grand National Series. Randy LaJoie, defending 300 champions here, as is Mike Magic Shoes McLaughlin. Elton Sawyer hopes to clean up on the 2.5-mile dry oval, while Jeff Green, he'll be among those eyeing victory in this first race of the season. The series young stars are here, like Casey Atwood. And the 4th generation of that most famous racing family, Adam Petty.
January 21st, 2000. Petty Enterprises announces they are consolidating their Cup, Busch, and Truck Series teams under a single banner. Prior to this, Adam had run under his father's PE2 team, while their Truck Series team ran under Richard Petty Motorsports. Now all 3 have their base in level cross, and the team debut a new logo to celebrate the union. The Pettys are already preparing for a massive change in sponsorship. STP, which sponsored the iconic number 43 since 1971, will leave the team at mid-season to be replaced by cereal company General Mills. To represent the change in branding, John Andretti will run 2 different paint schemes that year, transitioning to the blue and yellow Cheerios colors at Daytona in July. 1 month later, both the Pettys and Bill Davis Racing will announce a switch from Pontiac to Dodge in 2001.
I want to be that type of person that people can say, hey, he's a great person off the racetrack, and the fans know that.
Make sure you're getting my good side, okay? You know what that is.
Kenny Irwin's first season with Team Sabco gets off to a tragic start. In the early morning hours of January 31st, Irwin's hauler is on I-40 near Waverly, Arkansas, when a pickup truck crosses the median. While hauler driver David Walker survives the crash, the driver of the pickup does not. The team manages to salvage the dented trailer and prepare for Daytona. Thanks to Irwin's 2 poles the previous season, he's able to join teammate Sterling Marlin in the season-opening Budweiser shootout. He runs near the back of the 15-car field and finishes 9th, then times in 16th fastest for the Daytona 500. On Thursday, Irwin overcomes overheating problems to finish 9th in the second twin 125-mile qualifier, securing him the same 16th spot on the grid for his third 500 start. The next day is the truck race, and during the first unrestricted superspeedway race since 1987, Jeffrey Bodine is nearly killed in this spectacular accident.
Look out, we got trouble. This is going to hurt. Uh-oh. Oh, my. Oh, my.
Yep.
Keep your fingers crossed.
For Saturday's Busch Series opener, Irwin qualifies even better, lining up 10th for the Napa Auto Parts 300. Adam Petty will roll off 17th, but Tony Roper fails to qualify. In the race, both Irwin and Petty are eliminated in accidents. Petty finishes 37th, Irwin in 39th. Irwin rebounds in the Daytona 500 and finishes 14th, but none of his fellow Chevrolet teams are happy. They all say the new style Monte Carlo is at a significant aerodynamic disadvantage to the new Ford Taurus, which sweeps the top 5 behind a dominant Dale Jarrett. On February 26, Petty, Irwin, and Roper compete in the same Busch Series race for the first time. In the Alltel 200 at Rockingham, Petty finishes best of the group in 27th, ahead of 31st place Irwin and Roper in 37th. Irwin comes back Sunday, spins in the early laps, and finishes 22nd. At Las Vegas, Irwin misses the Busch race along with Roper. Petty finishes 17th, his best of the young season. In the Cup race, Irwin ends up 24th when the race is cut short by rain. The following round in Atlanta sees NASCAR give the Chevrolet teams a 2-inch air dam extension. Roper's Chevrolet still misses its second straight race. Irwin runs as high as 5th and finishes 10th ahead of 25th place Petty. Saturday's success doesn't translate for Irwin on Sunday, as he finishes 24th for the second straight race. At Darlington, Petty finishes 16th in the Busch race ahead of Irwin in 19th. The next day, Irwin's Cup race goes sideways early.
Oh, we got another crash off the corner there. Jerry Nadeau, Kenny Irwin. And this is Darlington.
Welcome to Darlington, South Carolina. Another incident here coming just one lap of green flag racing. In fact, a half a lap of green flag racing.
But Jerry, you remember a couple years ago we used to do the story about Flat Nose, the tree climbing dog here in Darlington. You got a flat nose on your Bell South Chevy. How bad's your race car?
It's pretty bad. They're putting in a new radiator. They're going to cut the whole front end off so it'll look like a modified when we go back out there. We didn't even get a chance to work up a sweat in the Bell South Chevrolet.
What happened out there?
Everybody coming through 1 and 2, and the 7 car was keeping everybody slow. And the spotter told me that, everybody was slowing down, so we're getting slowed down. And then whoever's running behind me just got in the back of me, and that's what started the whole deal.
The crew pieces the car back together, but Irwin only finishes in 38th. In the Busch Series race at Bristol, Sterling Marlin joins Irwin as a last-minute replacement for Dave Steele. Marlin goes to victory lane while Irwin is left in 30th, 10 spots ahead of Adam Petty with a blown motor. Roper is handed his 4th straight DNQ. Irwin tries to turn things around in the Food City 500, but he crashes again. This time collects Dale Earnhardt. Irwin finishes 165 laps down in 40th and drops to 30th in points. The day after the Cup race at Bristol, Adam Petty has a successful test in the Cup car and is confirmed to make his series debut at Texas. He's one of 48 drivers entered for 43 spots, including his father. In qualifying, Adam takes the 33rd spot, but Kyle misses the cut. Adam is a little disappointed by this, but says, quote, "There'll be plenty of times for that later."
Doubleheader weekend coming up for the first time here on a NASCAR weekend. You've got the Busch race going on right now, which you're currently running 12th in, and then tomorrow, your first ever NASCAR Winston Cup race where you'll start 33rd. How much of a relief is it to get the car in the Cup show for tomorrow?
I guess it's a big relief. Sprint pole day on Thursday went good for the Busch car. Sprint pole day on Friday was a little bit hairier. I didn't know if I was going to make it or not, but I did my rain dance last night, and evidently everything paid off. I did really badly want to race today, though. I didn't want to cancel this race. The Busch car is really, really good, and like I said, tomorrow I don't know what I have for the Winston Cup race, but I'm gonna go out and just ride. And I got 2 goals tomorrow. I got gain their respect over there in the Winston Cup Series, earn a little bit and then learn and gain as much experience on this racetrack and racing with those guys as I can. So I'm looking forward to it. Come and ask me how 500 miles was after I get out when my tongue's hanging out, but hopefully it'll be a good time.
On April 2nd, Adam runs mid-pack as he looks to gain experience.
And here's Adam Petty. Let's catch up with the 19-year-old. His great-grandfather, Lee Petty, a NASCAR champion in the 50s and winner of the first Daytona 500. His grandfather, the King, Richard Petty, winner of 7 Daytona 500s and 7 Winston Cups. His father, Kyle Petty, has been to Winston Cup victory lane as well. So now he's a 4th-generation driver. That's a first for NASCAR, and it may well be a first for any major professional sport. But there's Adam. He's in 30th place in his first Winston Cup drive. 1 lap down to the race leader. 124 laps completed as they try to tame Texas.
On lap 229, Kyle Petty takes over for Elliott Sadler as his relief driver, but father and son are again denied a chance to race each other. 14 laps earlier, Adam's engine lets go, leaving him 40th. He'd finished 39th in the Busch Series race.
That 19-year-old has a lot of promise and a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of responsibility to carry the most famous name in stock car racing to another generation.
I think he'll fit in that mold just right.
I think so too.
We broke a motor. That's what happens. That's just my luck. Last night I had a car capable of finishing in top 5, and somebody blew up in front of me, and I got in their wreck. And today we was just riding along, running about 24th, and blew a motor. So that happens. We'll come back at Charlotte. At least I didn't tear it up. I learned a lot, and I just figured out, you know, what my line was and how get back in my rhythm and everything like that. So I hope I earned some of those guys respect out there today. I had a good time, and we'll go get them next week.
Irwin finishes 16th in the Busch race at Texas, then 17th in Cup, and leads his first lap of the season. He watches as Dale Jr. takes the checkers for his first Cup Series victory. Tony Roper misses the Busch Series race, his 5th straight DNQ. Richard Petty isn't at the track to see all this. His father Lee, who had surgery for a stomach aneurysm in February, has fallen ill again. 3 days later, on April 5th, Lee dies at age 86. The next race for the Busch Series is at the Nashville Fairgrounds. 3 days after Lee's death, Adam finishes 34th, 3 spots behind Tony Roper, who finally manages to qualify. Irwin isn't in the field, but the Bell South car will run in the sponsor's race. Third-generation driver Stedman Marlin, age 19, will make his series debut at his family's home track. Irwin is in Martinsville for the Cup race. He breaks the radiator after hitting another car and manages only 37th, 53 laps down. Kenny Wallace qualifies outside pole that day, but while battling Mike Skinner for second, his day takes an unexpected turn.
Kenny Wallace used that outside line to retain. Look at him slide that brake. Oh, my goodness gracious. It looks like the left front brake just locked up on the 55 car.
Can you believe Kenny Wallace's luck?
He has had more than his share of the bad luck.
Hey, Kenny, you're all right. What happened?
Well, the throttle hung wide open. It's still hung wide open. That's first time in my career that's ever happened to me. Just, you know, big letdown for all the NASCAR fans and everybody. Everything was going right to plan, and just never had it happen before. Let off the gas and it wouldn't quit. First I thought it was the brakes, and then when I wrecked, I realized I started it up and it was wide open. So looked underneath the hood there, and it's just stuck wide open. So have to figure out why.
1 week later, Talladega marks the final time that Petty, Irwin, and Roper will race in the same event. All three get their best series finish of the season, with Irwin 9th, Petty 12th, and Roper in 24th. When Cup Series qualifying is delayed by rain, Irwin is among those who get to qualify in partial darkness. He times in 12th, his best start of the year so far. In Sunday's Die Hard 500, Irwin does even better and finds himself in the thick of the lead battle in the final laps.
And they're looking at the white flag. We've got one more lap to go at Talladega. Jeff Gordon completes lap number 187 in the lead. Skinner is second. Kenny Irwin down on the low side in third. Ward Burton up high and losing spots. Can Mike Skinner make a move? And can Kenny Irwin make a move? They're down the back stretch for the final time. Gordon keeps the car low on the racetrack. Nobody makes a move yet. Will anyone make the move before they hit the start-finish line? Now Kenny Irwin looks to the inside of Mike Skinner. Nothing going there. Dale Earnhardt is up on the high side. In the battle for third position. He's got a good run up there.
Remember what Mike
Skinner said he'd wreck his mother to win a race.
Let's see what happens. Gordon has the lead as they come down through the tri-oval. And Jeff Gordon is back. He's going to win the Die Hard 500.
The result is a fourth-place finish, one spot shy of Irwin's career best in the Daytona 500 a year earlier. Jeff Gordon's win is the 50th of his career.
And records his best finish of the year, Kenny, from 12th to 4th. Did you have anything at all those last laps for the 24 car?
I don't think so. You know, I was really trying to help the 31 get up there, and you know, we're just doing everything we can. The last 10 laps, it was wild. Just trying to pick my spot to keep inching up and not going backward. It was fun. The whole Bell South crew, they did an awesome job. All the green flag pit stops. I mean, you just can't say enough. I think we come in 15th and we come out 3rd, so they did an awesome job.
Did you let yourself think about the possibility that today could have been your first win? I mean, Gordon had won before, but you and Skinner were looking for that first one. I know you wanted it badly.
Yeah, you know, I didn't think about it. You're just trying to put yourself in a position the whole time just to inch up there. And a couple times, I think Sterling was leading, and I wanted to run second. And sure enough, I pulled out of line, and nobody went with me. And I think I went back to 25th. But it's kind of a cycle all day. You go back, come forward. It's just actually it's a lot of fun. It's pretty intense, but it's a lot of fun.
Congratulations on a great run.
Thank you.
Kenny Irwin finishes 4th. Speaking of finishing second, I think John Kernan has caught up with the second-place finisher, Mike Skinner.
The next day, however, team owner Felix Sabates is busy denying rumors that he might sell his two-car team to Chip Ganassi. Ganassi has already indicated he wants to expand his kart team into NASCAR, but it's yet unclear whether he'll start from scratch or invest in an existing program like Sabates. On April 20th at Richmond, Tony Roper is involved in a serious crash during testing. He's taken by ambulance to a local hospital for observation, but is discharged later that night. 9 days later, he fails to qualify at Fontana. Petty finishes 27th in the Busch race there, with Irwin in 32nd. Irwin struggles even more in the Cup race. He's running near the back when he crashes by himself, leaving him 42nd. On May 5th, Roper fails to qualify at Richmond, site of his testing crash 2 weeks earlier. Petty finishes 16th in what will turn out to be his 43rd and final Busch Series start. The next night on May 6th, Irwin has another bad race. While racing Mike Bliss down the front stretch, Bliss runs over a piece of shattered brake rotor off Robert Presley's Ford. Bliss blows a tire and pins Irwin into the outside wall. Irwin's car sits in the middle of the track for some time before anyone arrives at the scene. Initial reports say Irwin lost awareness while talking to others after his release from the infield care center and that he had to be transported to the hospital. This is later denied by the team. Irwin himself says he felt sore but decided against going to the hospital. Injury or none, his second straight 42nd place finish has dropped him to 29th in the points. On May 10th, 4 days after the Cup race in Richmond, Adam Petty is in Charlotte for a test. He's now planning to add the Winston Open to his schedule, but it's unclear whether he'll run a Chevrolet or a Pontiac. The team has both at the track, and it's anyone's guess which one he'll run the following week. He then travels north to Loudon, New Hampshire, where he enters the upcoming 200-lap race 24th in Busch Series points.
Rambling stone fences and white clapboard buildings. This is pastoral, picturesque New England. A hotbed of stock car racing? You better believe it. A quarter century these fans have waited to see these Winston Cup drivers. And finally, there's a world-class facility here to showcase their talents. All the stars are here. And so are 70,000 jacked-up race fans. They've waited 25 years, and they just won't wait any longer.
Nicknamed the Magic Mile, though measuring just a shade over that, the New Hampshire International Speedway started hosting NASCAR Modified Busch North and Busch Grand National Series races when it opened in 1990. It was added to the Winston Cup calendar in 1993. Prior to 1998, the track's four corners, each banked at just 12 degrees, had been repaved, giving the asphalt a darker complexion at the end of each 1,500-foot straightaway. For the year 2000, Loudon has 3 NASCAR weekends on the schedule, one each in May, July, and September. As of this, the track's 10th anniversary season, Loudon has not had a single fatality. That is, until the afternoon of May 12th.
Good afternoon from New Hampshire International Speedway. We greet you today with heavy, sorrow-filled hearts because during practice here yesterday, 19-year-old Adam Petty was killed. An accident in turn 3 taking the life of the fourth generation of racing Pettys. Adam Petty first grabbed headlines in this sport when he won his ARCA and Super Speedway debut at the Lowe's Motor Speedway in Charlotte back in October of 1998. Of late, this has been the best of times and the worst of times for the Petty family. The excitement of the family's involvement in the return of Dodge to NASCAR racing. The excitement of seeing Adam Petty move to the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit for the DirecTV 500 at Texas just a few short weeks ago. Then all of that tempered by the passing of the family's patriarch, Lee Petty. And now, just unbelievably, Adam Petty, at 19 years of age, having just begun to experience life, tragically taken from all of us. Needless to say, we offer our condolences to Kyle Petty, to his wife Patty, to Adam's brother Austin, his sister Montgomery Lee, to Richard and Linda Petty, the entire Petty family. A heartfelt condolence, although I'm afraid that at a time like this, our words just come up way too short of filling the void that certainly they have to be experiencing. Adam Petty, dead at the age of 19.
Shortly after 2 p.m., during practice for the Busch 200, Adam Petty's car goes straight at the entrance of Turn 3 and smashes into the wall nearly head-on. There is no footage of the accident, but eyewitnesses say the car briefly catches fire as it grinds to a stop against the outside wall. As the Petty team prepares the backup, emergency crews begin to cut the frame of the primary. Petty is removed and transported by ambulance to a helicopter pad outside the track, where an airlift awaits. By the time Petty arrives at Concord Hospital, he is pronounced dead. The cause of death is originally listed as serious head injuries, but it is later clarified as a closed head injury at the base of the skull, also known as a basilar skull fracture. The number 45 car is covered in a tarp, then removed from the track. While it's never officially confirmed what happened to the car, it's believed to have been buried. The team withdraws, the future of both team and family very much in doubt.
Well, today's show was meant to be a celebration of Adam Petty's life. He was certainly just a fine young individual.
Just a prince of a guy. He came from one of the finest families that you'll ever want to meet. And our prayers and best wishes continue to go out to the entire Petty family.
You know, this is a very dark time, but I know what I'm going to do when I think of Adam Petty. I'm going to remember that smile. And I encourage fans to do the same thing. Remember the smile. Then it won't be so bad.
Very good point, Steve. Remember the Petty smile.
The somber race is won by Tim Fedewa. Interestingly, this is the only Busch Series race of the first 13 where Irwin's number 42 is not entered. Roper fails to qualify. The following Monday at 11 a.m., services are held for Adam in High Point. Among the drivers who attend are Ward Burton, Bill Elliott, Ernie Irvin, Dale Jarrett, Bobby and Terry Labonte, and Bobby Allison. A few years earlier, Allison had separated from his wife Judy after the deaths of their sons Davey and Clifford Allison, both rising stars in NASCAR. Davey's final start came in the inaugural race at New Hampshire in 1993. Clifford's passing, which happened following a crash in a Busch Series practice session at Michigan in 1992, was the most recent death in the series before Adam. The couple reunites as they console the Petty family, and later that summer will remarry in Bessemer, Alabama. On May 17th, 5 days after Adam's death, Kyle Petty says he won't run the Winston Open at Charlotte, where a 4x6-foot flag bearing Adam's name will fly over Victory Lane. 4 days later, Adam's Busch Series team is also withdrawn from the next race in Charlotte on May 27th. Kyle won't run that weekend either, and the team has put Steve Grissom, the team's Truck Series driver, into the number 44 Hot Wheels Pontiac. Grissom will fail to qualify, joining a list of 5 DNQs. On May 20th, Lyndon Amick carries a Petty blue decal on his hood for the ARCA race at Charlotte. By race's end, Adam's number 45 rolls into Victory Lane for a second time.
Corner. No, not going to happen. Lyndon Amick will win his first career ARCA victory with Kenny Earnhardt and the veteran Tim Steele in tow. Lyndon Amick led the final 19 laps of the event, scores the victory. There you see him driving by what's left of the Shauna Robinson car after she was involved in an accident in Turn 1 in the last lap scramble to the finish. But it is Lyndon Amick from South Carolina in the Ken Schrader Racing entry here. He has scored the victory, his first in the ARCA Series.
He's a happy young man wearing an Adam Petty hat tonight. There he is. Lyndon,
Your car owner, Kenny Schrader, was not very encouraging on the radio. He said you had better cars behind you. Did you think you could hold those guys off?
Well, I knew if I just hold my head, and I tell you, run this race like Adam did 2 years ago. He won this deal, man. We're carrying his name on the hood. This means the world to me, and this is for the Petty family and for Kyle. And we love them to death. And, you know, our hearts are with them, but I'm with them all week, and that's why I want to do this. It was my idea to put this guy on the hood, and he was with me tonight.
It's against this backdrop that Kenny Irwin Jr. competes in his second running of the Winston All-Star Race. As in 1998, Irwin advances to the main event by being the new driver of a team that won the previous season. Sponsor Bell South celebrates their first start in the All-Star Race with a special paint scheme for Project Impact, a disaster readiness program in collaboration with FEMA. The race gets off to a bad start when Irwin breaks loose in turn 3, putting John Andretti into the outside wall. Irwin finishes 12th, 1 lap down to Dale Jr. Despite the struggles, for Irwin it's a welcome distraction from the persistent rumors about Chip Ganassi investing in Team Sabco, and now new rumors about switching to Dodge, rumors that don't include Irwin or his teammate Sterling Marlin staying with the team. Then, after the race, a concrete walkway leaving the Charlotte track collapses. 78 fans are injured, 13 of them critically. Fortunately, none are killed. 1 week later, Irwin makes what will turn out to be his 14th and final Busch Series start. He finishes 20th, then runs 24th in the Coca-Cola 600. Across the garage, Tony Roper is frustrated. Contrary to what he was promised, the Washington Irving team's cars are old and slow, accounting for his several DNQs. In qualifying for the Busch race, Roper is swapped out of the number 50 for Stanton Barrett, but Barrett also fails to qualify. The team insists this is only a temporary change, and that Roper will be back behind the wheel at Dover. That changes on June 1st, as the Dr. Pepper team isn't entered at the Monster Mile. One driver who is entered is Kyle Petty, who to Richard's surprise will not only run the Cup race, but drive Adam's car on Saturday. The moment overwhelms Kyle in his first public appearance since the accident.
You know, coming in here last night and just rolling through the front gate of the racetrack and knowing that Adam wasn't here was pretty hard. I don't think the emotion of getting back in the car and getting in his car is going to be that bad, because I've been around his crew every day and been around that car every day. I think it was just coming back to the racetrack and seeing new people and being around that part of it. That's the toughest part. We used to joke about being father and son and best friend, but it was a lot truer, and I think we were. And I think Austin and I, and Montgomery Lee and Patty and all of us are in the same way. So I think that was, I don't know, we tried to do that because we felt like that was more important than the racing stuff. Racing's important, but your family was a lot more important.
Kyle qualifies for the Busch race and runs as high as 6th before a late pit stop drops him to 26th. Kyle misses the field for the Cup race, but serves as a relief driver for teammate John Andretti, who is struggling with rib injuries from his tangle with Irwin in the Winston. He does all this at Dover, site of Kyle's last Cup victory and Adam's first laps led in the series. Irwin finishes 17th at Dover after qualifying 11th, and at one point nudges Jimmy Spencer out of the way. June 11th, Michigan. Kyle Petty gets his number 44 into a Cup race for the first time since Richmond, but a blown engine leaves him 39th. Irwin doesn't finish much better in 35th. In the next round at Pocono, Kyle's engine lets go again, putting him 41st. Irwin takes 25th. The series then heads west to Sears Point, where Kyle Petty makes a statement in qualifying. He puts his car on the outside pole, his first front row start since April 1996 at Martinsville.
Kyle Petty knows that a win today won't change history, and it certainly won't turn back the clock. But it might be the first step toward the healing of a broken heart. Simply put, Rusty Wallace may have the speed, Jeff Gordon may have the string, but Kyle Petty has the spirit and the glow from a very special sun that is shining on him here today.
Kyle's run happens on June 23, 2000, the same day I take this picture of Irwin's car on the front stretch. That night, in the ARCA race at Toledo, Scott Baker is killed in this accident when his car strikes a protective tire barrier. In Sunday's Cup race on the road course, Petty finishes 19th. Irwin squeezes Elliott Sadler in the wall, then spins out in the final laps and finishes 25th. 4 days after Sears Point, things have gone from bad to worse at Washington Irving Motorsports. The team's website is down, and there's word the crew has been sent home without pay. Tony Roper quits and looks for a new team. It's heard he may still have support from Dr. Pepper as a sponsor, but that falls through as they sign with David Green at C.C. Welliver. Later that same week, Roper tests with Alumni Motorsports, a struggling single-car Busch team fielded by Ohio State alumnus Brent Bouchou. The team doesn't go with Roper for the next race in Milwaukee and sticks with Lance Hooper. Meanwhile, Kyle Petty arranges with ASA driver Scott Hansen to qualify the number 45 at Milwaukee, while Petty runs the Cup race in Daytona that coming Saturday. Kyle finishes 30th in this Daytona race, held on July 1st, which also marks the final Cup race broadcast on CBS. That Pepsi 400 will become the 87th and final Cup start for Kenny Irwin Jr. Irwin stays out to lead lap 86 under caution, the 179th lap he's led in a Cup car. On lap 123, he makes this daring move down the backstretch.
They're pinching me every once in a while up here as they go 5 wide, 6 wide down the back straightaway.
That's for about 13th that Jarrett moved into. He was 29th after he had his tire problem, that long pit stop.
Kenny Irwin, that green car, ran the whole back straightaway on the apron to gain position.
Irwin finishes 22nd and sits 28th in points, exactly where he ranked at the end of his rookie season. It's been a frustrating year, but outwardly, Irwin has reason to smile. Ganassi has gone over plans for him to stay in the number 42 in 2001, and he'll be driving a brand new car the next week at New Hampshire. He's also planning on marrying his girlfriend, and is thinking of the right way to propose. The next day on July 2nd, Kyle Petty travels to Milwaukee, where Scott Hansen has qualified the number 45 car in 18th. Petty finishes 8th, the first top 10 finish of the year for the team. That same day, NASCAR officials looking into Adams' crash report no signs of mechanical failure. While crew chiefs still point to a stuck throttle, Mike Helton says there is no evidence of that. Regardless, Petty will not compete in the following week's Cup race in Loudon, and again hands the wheel to Steve Grissom. However, Richard Petty will make the trip to Loudon as a goodwill gesture to track president Bob Baer. The King will be there in time for opening practice on Friday, July 7th. Programs printed for the event already call it the New England 300, but the summer of 2000 is the height of the .com bubble, and websites are eager to buy up naming rights to races. And so, after the Mall.com 400 at Darlington, but before the GoRacing.com 500 at Bristol, the investment of a cosmetic surgeon referral service means New Hampshire will host the ThatLook.com 300.
Thank you. I've been very fortunate to have some great car owners through the years. Two especially that are here tonight, which are my parents. They're the ones that had to sacrifice so much to get me to this point in my career. Thank you. I love you, Mom and Dad.
And he said, I'd rather be doing this than anything else in the whole world. And if I die doing this, Mom, it's what I want to do.
Right.
And was the last time I talked to him, and you know, he said, I'll call you after qualification.
"11:23 a.m. Just 8 minutes into the first practice, and during his first timed lap, Kenny Irwin Jr. slams the turn 3 wall nearly head-on. This time the car ramps onto the driver's side, slides for nearly the entire distance of turns 3 and 4, and rolls to a stop on its roof. Brett Bodine, who was following Irwin into the corner, calls it one of the worst accidents he's ever seen. When track medical staff reach the scene, Irwin is unresponsive. There's blood on his uniform. He's pulled out in 10 minutes, rushed to the infield care center, then transported to Concord Hospital. At 2:14 p.m., the worst fears are realized. For the second time in 56 days, a driver has been killed at New Hampshire, and for the first time since Rodney Orr's practice crash at Daytona in 1994, it's a Cup driver. Irwin was just 30 years old.
Just like everyone else down here, as I stand here, it's just really hard for me to believe that less than 2 months after the Adam Petty tragedy, that once again the NASCAR racing family is forced to deal with another loss of life. And like Adam Petty, just like you said, Kenny Irwin was one of NASCAR's brightest young rising stars on their horizon. He had a lot of promise, there's no doubt about that. In his days in USAC, he won 2 Rookie of the Year titles there. Then he came to NASCAR and won 2 more in the Craftsman Truck Series and, like you said, in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. It was obvious, evident, the amount of promise that career held. Now, like you say, it will have to go unfulfilled.
my thoughts and my prayers are with Kenny Irwin's friends and his family. We lost an extremely nice young man here on Friday. Here's Steve Burns.
Thanks, Glenn. It's so hard to know what to say because nothing we can say will bring Kenny Irwin back. You know, just a moment ago, Eli Gold referred to Kenny Irwin as a racer. Folks, that's the ultimate term of respect in this sport. Not to be called Mr., but to be called a racer, and that's what Kenny Irwin was. He was also a stand-up guy. You know, when he got in that 28 car, he endured some criticism. He never ducked the media. He'd always answer a question, always polite about doing so. Kenny Irwin was a racer, and he was also a stand-up guy, Ralph.
Whether he was putting the right rear of his midget in the cushion at Terre Haute or drafting at Daytona, Kenny Irwin was just that, Steve. He was a real racer, and he loved nothing more in this life than to do that, climb behind the wheel of a race car and give it everything he had. And he earned a great deal of admiration from his fellow competitors for that very reason. A lot of the drivers that you've talked to here this weekend, including names like Tony Stewart, will tell you he was the toughest competitor they ever faced. Some of the NASCAR Winston Cup drivers never got to see the full complement of what Kenny Irwin could do behind the wheel of a race car. Unfortunately, we won't have that chance. But for those of us who have seen Kenny behind the wheel doing what he did best, it truly was magical. Unfortunately, for now, the magic is gone.
The cause of death is printed as a crushed skull, but is later clarified as a basilar skull fracture, the same as Adam Petty's. As with Petty, the cause of the accident remains unknown. Robert Fisk, Loudon's police chief, says NASCAR contacted his department 2 hours after the crash, too late to do a proper investigation. Since practice restarts just 30 minutes after the accident, they can't even determine whether the wreck happened before or after Irwin started to turn. A stuck throttle is again believed to be the cause. As with Adam Petty, the number 42 team loads up and leaves the track. Sometime later, Felix Sabates will have the car destroyed to deter souvenir hunters. The rest of the day's activities go on as scheduled.
I just don't know what to say, except it's just super tragic. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's something I hope none of my family or friends ever have to go through.
Makes everything else kind of not really seem to matter, you know. It's just very unfortunate. Just glad to be able to say that I knew him as a teammate, but more than anything else, he was a friend, and we've all lost a good friend.
They need to do something. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, these modifieds got a kill switch on these things when something hangs up on them. You're just going too fast here in straightaways, and there's no. Your head can only take so much.
Why can't we do something about this? Why can't we do something with the cars when these throttles hang, or if it was a throttle hung, it looks like. Why can't we do something about the racetrack? Why can't we do something? You know, this stuff happens for reasons. We need to learn from them.
Just 1 day later in the Truck Series race, Dennis Setzer enters the third turn.
For 6th place, Jimmy Hensley, number 16, and it's Setzer hard in the wall.
He did. I don't know if he locked the brakes or what happened, but boy, he did go hard into that wall.
More trucks involved there. That's Jack Sprague, number 24, on fire there.
Setzer walks away. 9 months earlier, Irwin was involved in this famous altercation with Tony Stewart, his old rival in USAC. After Irwin's death, it is Stewart who offers to fly Irwin's family and coach driver on his private jet. It is Stewart who wins the somber race on Sunday, which is shortened by 27 laps due to rain. And it is Stewart who then gives that trophy to Irwin's family.
I raced with Kenny for 9 years, and you know, ever since I moved down to the 3/4 midgets and the full midgets, he was the guy I had to race hard each week, and if I wanted to win a race, he was the guy I had to beat each week. So, you know, it's just one of those weird things. I mean, ever since we've moved into Winston Cup, I mean, every time I get a practice sheet, the first thing I do is look to see where he is and look to see where Bobby Labonte is. So, it's just hard. I mean, he was a great racer. I mean, in the 21 years I've raced, there was nobody tougher than he was. I mean, it didn't matter whether it was a midget on dirt or a Silver Crown car or a sprint car on pavement. It didn't matter. He was a contender to win every week. And you know, I heard a quote yesterday. That people thought that they hadn't seen the best of Kenny Irwin in a Winston Cup car. I agree.
Teams can't wait to leave New Hampshire that rainy day, but they all reach a shared realization. They will all be back just 2 months later for another 300-mile race. Figuring out what has happened and what could or would be done becomes a new priority. Were these two accidents simply a tragic coincidence, or was something else happening?
You know, when you start thinking about Kenny Irwin's accident, it is a tragedy, but it also makes everybody aware of the problems that they have with the cars, with the racetrack, and everybody's focused, and they're trying to find out ways to make sure this does not happen anymore. And hopefully they'll make the racetracks a little safer, race cars a little safer, so we don't have to have these kind of shows anymore. Everybody here is thinking about Kenny Irwin.
NASCAR is more like a community, and if a citizen of a community passes away, the community still has to go on. The lights have to work, and the water has to run, and life has to go on. And your heart's not in it 100% necessarily, but it has to go on. And that's the way we look at our schedules. When it could have been that we didn't press on yesterday, but I don't know that would have made it any better. I think a lot of people, for the most part, just soon stay busy. But our procedures are to press on, and in cases like this. So it's not because we don't have a heart or a soul. It's simply because that we have a lot of responsibility. Everybody does in the garage areas to a lot of different people. And the biggest thing is that that's what we do. We race, and that's what Kenny did. He races, and that's what Adam did. He races, and that's what we do. And it's a matter of I think in some people's mind, it's what's necessary is to press on.
I think probably the fan, the guy at home watching this on TV, or that heard about what happened here with Kenny, I'm sure he's sitting there saying, how can those guys, how can they go back out there and act like nothing happened? How do they do that? And trust me, in this garage area Friday, people were walking around looking at each other like, how can we do this? How can we keep going? You know, Kenny was a great kid, and we all loved him. And you know, I felt really awkward getting in my car and going out on the track, because a kid had just lost his life in that corner over there. I had to drive down that straightaway right into that same corner. Man, I'm checking my throttle, I'm checking my brakes, I'm checking my brain. What am I doing here? We have to learn from this. Let's don't sweep it under the rug and forget about it. Let's learn from it. Let's move forward. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. Let's look at the racetrack. You know, that's two times right in the same spot. Let's look at the racetrack. Let's be objective about it. Let's don't just let it go and say, oh, it's one of those things. Let's make some, let's do something with it. Let's show that out of respect for Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin that we're going to make some changes. We're going to look at this a little differently, and we're going to try to prevent it from happening again. From an old guy that's been in a sport for 30 years, that would give me some comfort. We're taking this thing, and we're not just avoiding it. We're not just hoping it'll go away, but we're saying, okay, we had a problem there, and we fixed it. That would give me a lot more confidence in the track and NASCAR and everybody involved. It'd give me a lot more respect for everybody involved if it was handled just like an airplane crash. Take the car, a panel of experts puts it back together. Here's what happened. The throttle hung in the floor mat, or the hot throttle hung in the firewall, or the throttle hung under the air cleaner. But something happened, and the throttle hung. There's plenty of people that saw it. So don't tell me, you know, well, we don't know what happened.
Ward Burton puts it succinctly. 2 means there's a problem, he says. It needs to be addressed. On July 10th, NASCAR historian Bob Latford weighs in on if NASCAR has become too dangerous. If you just took one lap at each of the 188 tracks that Winston Cup has raced at over 52 years and make it one piece of highway, he says, I doubt there's one equal section of highway in the country that has had that few fatalities over the same amount of time. 2 days later, on July 12th, services are held for Irwin at the Abundant Life Church in Indianapolis. At least 500 people attend, including IMS President Tony George. Dozens of red roses adorn the casket. The Reverend Peter Bosworth recalls a conversation with the driver. You know what? I'd drive for free, he told him. I'd race for free. That's my passion. That's my passion. Still, the season pushes forward. One day after the services on July 13th, Truck Series driver Jamie McMurray parts ways with MB Motorsports, owned by Missouri native Mike Mittler. Mittler's team had been around since the start of the series in 1995. That year gave Tony Roper his first 2 starts in the series at Milwaukee and Martinsville. With McMurray's departure comes an opportunity for the two to reunite. Roper accepts. His first start back with the team will be next month at Indianapolis Raceway Park, site of his career-best runner-up finish 2 years earlier. Other planned races are Chicago, Richmond, Nashville, and Texas. 3 days after the Mittler deal, Kyle Petty finishes 5th at Nazareth, which turns out to be the best run of the season for Adam's car. The team will skip the next race in Pikes Peak, then run the remainder of the season.
And a quick word from Kyle Petty. You finished 5th, but from the reaction down here, you won.
No, I tell you what, it was a great day for the Sprint PCS car, and Chris Huzzy made a phenomenal call that got us up front. Like I said, I just had no practice on the racetrack. I like to tour the wall down 100 times. It took me 50 laps to get used to it, and they made a great call. Took a 10th place or 15th place driver in a first place car, and we run 5th with it. And I'm just tickled to death. It's like I said, Adam came here and run 4th last year, and I always said he had more talent in his little finger than I've got in my whole body, and I guess that shows it. And just to come here and be able to do some of the stuff he done, I'm pretty proud of these guys, and just thank God.
The next day, Team Sabco announces a permanent number change to their Bell South team from 42 to 01. The paint scheme is also changed, so the distinctive neon green added to Irwin's car is nowhere on it, perhaps due to the long-standing superstition behind the color. Since most drivers are under contract, the team's driver selection comes down to Todd Bodine and Ted Musgrave. Since Bodine is running the Busch race in Pikes Peak, they picked Musgrave. Sterling Marlin, Irwin's former teammate, will take over the rest of Irwin's 4 remaining scheduled Busch Series starts, starting the next month in Bristol. Like Musgrave, Marlin will also run the number 01. Musgrave's first start comes at Pocono, where he runs 16th. That same day,
trouble in turn 1. Ricky Rudd into the outside wall. Rudd is into the outside wall. Caution is out. Looks like maybe the right front tire went down or something, because he has hit the outside wall hard.
And it started way back up on the straightaway. I'm looking at the black marks. You can see his right front is not moving at all. The whole right side of that car caved in.
Yeah, I'm in pretty good shape. Just kind of knocked me silly for a second. Hit that wall pretty good down there. Blew a right front tire. Not sure exactly what happened, but cut a right front tire, blew something on the right front. I had it before I turned, right about time to get ready to turn down in the corner, and all I had time to do was grab some brakes, and that was it.
On August 1st, after nearly a month of silence, NASCAR issues a technical bulletin to all teams, mandating 2 changes to the cars. The first mandates an independent travel stop to keep the throttle plates from opening beyond a vertical position. The second is, in effect, a cutoff switch, a button the driver can press to disconnect power to the ignition system. As it happens, the cars already have such switches, but in each case they have been placed out of the driver's reach. The new regulation requires they be within reach of the driver's thumb, allowing it to be hit at a moment's notice. Both changes go into effect for the upcoming Brickyard 400. 2 days before the Brickyard, Tony Roper makes his first Truck Series start of the season at IRP. He finishes 30th in Mittler's number 26 Ford. The next day, the company Downing Atlanta reports sales figures of their new head and neck restraint device, or HANS device, which has been getting more attention since Adam Petty's wreck in May. Since introducing a new and improved version of the device in late June, Downing Atlanta has sold 35 with another 44 on order. NASCAR's Gary Nelson says he's not ready to make the device mandatory, even though CART and Formula One are already preparing to do so. Part of the reason may be that Bill Simpson is announcing a cheaper alternative to the HANS. Despite NASCAR's inaction, both Ford and General Motors are strongly encouraging their drivers to use the HANS. That same day, after months of speculation, Felix Sabates finally announces Chip Ganassi will partner with him in 2001, forming a new 2-car team running Dodges, Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates. August 5th, the Brickyard 400, held in Kenny Irwin Jr.'s hometown, is run on what would have been Irwin's 31st birthday. It was here 3 years ago he was announced as Robert Yates' new driver, here 1 year ago that he all but knew he was out of that car, and here today the race is dedicated in his honor.
31 years ago today, a boy was born on the east side of Indianapolis in the shadow of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As he grew, so did his passion for racing. Kenny Irwin will be shown in 4th spot in this year. And as a young man, he distinguished himself with his racing accomplishments. Ladies and gentlemen, the 7th running of the Brickyard 400 is dedicated to the memory of Kenny Irwin Jr.
At 11 a.m. local time, balloons are released at the track. An hour later, more balloons fly near Team Sabco's offices in Mooresville. The Mooresville tribute is arranged by Debbie Musgrave, wife of Ted, Irwin's replacement. In the race itself, 2 drivers aren't in the field because of injuries. Terry Labonte briefly lost consciousness in this crash at Daytona a month earlier, then wrecked hard again at Loudon. This ends Labonte's Ironman streak at 655 straight starts. Also missing is Jeremy Mayfield, who is hurt in a crash during practice. His relief driver is Kyle Petty. At a crossroads both professionally and personally, Petty will hand over driving duties of the number 44 after Bristol to focus on Adams' Busch Series car. Steve Grissom will drive once again, but in the final 11 races will fail to qualify 7 times. On August 12th, Tony Roper makes his second truck start at the Nashville Fairgrounds, besting 11 other drivers who failed to qualify. He finishes in last place, out with engine failure. He doesn't attempt the next race at Chicago Motor Speedway, which happens to see NASCAR's first live test of the new cutoff switch. On lap 124, Rob Morgan's throttle sticks heading into turn 1. Morgan hits the button, cutting power to the motor and avoiding a hit to the outside wall. He recovers to finish 23rd. 3 days later, Kyle Petty presents a check for $10,045 to the Brenner Children's Hospital in Winston-Salem. Jayski reports that some kind of foundation in Adams' memory is in the planning stages. September 2nd, Irwin is inducted into the Darlington Record Club for being the defending pole sitter of the upcoming Southern 500. With 13 days until opening practice for the next Cup Series race at New Hampshire, Jeff Gordon, Dale Jarrett, and Rusty Wallace are insisting softwall barriers must be added to the turns before they race there. NASCAR's Mike Helton disagrees. Helton instead considers a change to the cars. He and his team consider possible aerodynamic changes and dropping the maximum cubic inch limit from 355 to around 305. All this comes amidst a possible change in management at NASCAR, as Jim France is rumored to take the place of Bill France Jr. The next day, there's a rumor of a possible driver's strike at New Hampshire, which would be the first since the inaugural Talladega race in 1969. Bobby Labonte, the series point leader, says he'll race whether changes are made or not, but also says he's not happy about it. Days earlier, Labonte wins the Southern 500 in a backup car. His primary is destroyed in a crash after his throttle hangs going into turn 3. Labonte walks away, but is clearly shaken by the accident. "I can tell you it scares the heck out of you when your throttle sticks like that," he says. "You're in a panic. It would appear that you could just reach up and shut the engine off, but at a place like this where you're going so fast, it's tough." September 8th, 1 week until New Hampshire, and 1 day after Roper finishes 21st in the Truck Series race at Richmond. NASCAR approves a live test of an automatic version of the cutoff switch. Called a dumb switch, the system developed by Jack Roush uses sensors to automatically shut off the engine, where the device detects 850 to 900 pounds of brake pressure while the throttle is at or nearly full open. 6 teams are slated to run it, but all are concerned after Bobby Labonte's car is found to have a faulty sensor. At the same time, a new rumor begins that NASCAR is planning on instituting restrictor plates in New Hampshire and that teams are already preparing their engines for next week. During the weekend's racing at Richmond, Elliott Sadler runs a plate during practice. It costs him 1 second a lap. 2 days later and 5 days before practice, NASCAR confirms they will mandate restrictor plates for the following week's race in Loudon. Not only will they be mandated for Cup, but also the Busch North Series race held the day before. And before each practice, teams will also take so-called pre-practice laps behind the pace car to ensure proper brake temperature. There's one big catch, however. NASCAR won't allow any testing at Loudon prior to the race. Steve Park, Dale Jr., and Jeff Burton test at Milwaukee. Dale Earnhardt tests at Greenville Pickens, joining a pre-planned test for Busch Series driver Kevin Harvick. Around this time, Earnhardt speaks out about the lingering controversies during a rare interview by his hauler. His quotes are in 2 articles in the September 14th issue of NASCAR Scene. He first agrees that NASCAR had to do something, but takes issue with what he perceived to be unproductive negativity. He also disagrees that the oval in New Hampshire is particularly unsafe. "It's not a totally safe situation anywhere you race," he says. "I accepted that when I came into racing." Earnhardt also offers a theory of his own for what caused the 2 fatalities. During a conversation with Dave Marcus about why they wear open-face helmets, the two not only insist their helmets are safer, but that full-face helmets are dangerous. "Why aren't they safe?" asks Earnhardt of the full-faced helmets. "Because you slam your face into them," says Marcus. "And what does it do to the back of your neck when you hit?" "You break it right here," says Marcus, pointing to the base of his neck. "That leverage point is there and your head keeps going. Something's got to bust back there." Then Earnhardt says, "It's like somebody puts a noose around your neck and throws you off the gallows." Though it is true that Earnhardt never uses the Hans device, this last quote will be attributed incorrectly to Earnhardt's mistrust of it. Marcus is likewise not against advances in safety. Just over a year earlier, he survives this brutal crash at Pocono thanks to a special shoulder strap attached to his helmet. Pioneered by fellow driver Phil Barkdahl, the horse collar style device has since been adopted by ARCA.
One track, two eerily similar incidents, two young stars gone. Questions are raised.
We know what we need to do. My answer to that is strap your butt in there at 220 mile an hour in a straightaway and have something go wrong and hit the wall head on and tell me if you'd like to have some cushion down there. Well, I tell you, I would.
Soft wall technology used at other tracks is tested, but without closure. Kill switches are installed. Various safety measures tried, but once again the monster raises its ugly head. An announcement is made.
We know how to slow cars down. We've done it at Daytona and Talladega for the same reason, where the cars became too fast for the track. And we know how to do that, and we do that with restrictor plates.
The dreaded plate is bolted on. Opinions fly.
I don't know how it'll work.
I think that's a good idea.
If you hit the wall at 160 or 180 to me, you know, it don't matter. Let's go up there and go race and see what happens.
Engine builders spring into action and burn the midnight oil in the push to squeeze research, development, and production into a scant few days.
Yeah, we know we have to build something kind of in between what we've always built, so we just kind of, I mean, you have no time to do it, so it's pretty much a stab in the dark.
So many questions, so much at stake. 43 teams are poised to enter the unknown.
The Cup Series races at Loudon this weekend, Kyle. I'm sure people would like to know your thoughts on that track and the safety issues that have come up about it.
Yeah, you know, and I've probably thought as much or more than a lot of people have on the issue. I don't blame Loudon at all. At the racetrack, the Bears are some of the greatest people in the world, as you know, and anybody that's ever dealt with them. You know, and talking to Bob, he had an incredibly hard time. He and I had a good conversation right after it happened, and they're just great people. But, you know, is the racetrack dangerous? Tough question. They run 10 million miles there and nothing ever happened, you know, and all of a sudden you have two wrecks, you know, within a short period of time, so everybody's up in arms. Can we be safer? Yeah. Can the racetracks be safer? Yes.
September 15th, the Winston Cup Series is back in New Hampshire for opening practice. Tony Stewart wears a helmet painted like Irwin's and seeks a season sweep at the track. Jack Roush reports his Cup Series drivers will carry his automatic dumb switch that was tested at Richmond. Joining them will be Ricky Rudd, Bobby Labonte, Tony Stewart, and Elliott Sadler. Roush has 14 more of the switches available for the 35 remaining drivers entered in the race. By October 1st, he'll have enough for a full 43-car field. The opening practice comes and goes without serious incident. Bobby Labonte wins the pole. Steve Grissom just misses the cut in Kyle Petty's car. Ted Musgrave qualifies 11th with what was once Kenny Irwin's team, matching Irwin's own season-best start at Dover.
In the wake of two fatal accidents here, last week NASCAR mandated the use of restrictor plates to slow the cars down. Restrictor plates had never been used on Winston Cup cars at New Hampshire or even a track like this, and that has opened wide the gates of the great unknown. Teams have struggled with engine combinations, chassis setups, transmissions, and gear choices. Engines are down 300 horsepower. As a result, fuel mileage is up. Some teams can go 25 laps further than ever before. Some adapted Daytona engines to here. Others adapted unrestricted engines to a plate. Everyone is running a combination they never ran before. Talk in the garage today is that the race could go to someone experienced and successful in cars with less power. NASCAR Busch Series cars, someone like Mark Martin. The advantage could go to those who have expended extraordinary effort, like Steve Park and Jeff Burton, who tested at a similar track in Milwaukee. All hope that their car will be fastest, but mostly all hope that the race will be safe. Just let them race safe.
On Sunday, defending race winner Joe Nemechek climbs from 30th to 9th. John Andretti starts 31st and finishes 7th. But outside pole sitter Jeff Burton leads all 300 laps and wins under caution, NASCAR's first flag-to-flag performance since 1978. Curiously, Burton is actually the most outspoken driver on the subject of safety and faces stiff opposition from his fellow competitors.
And I was hearing a lot of things that I just plain and simple disagreed with. And I thought that it needed to be said. And it wasn't acceptable to lose Adam Petty. It wasn't acceptable to lose, anybody. That wasn't acceptable. And it wasn't okay to just say that's part of the sport. And it wasn't okay to say, well, they're young and not big enough. And no, that's crazy.
In the end, no one, not even the winner of the race, leaves New Hampshire happy. But everyone feels like they've dodged a bullet.
There's the names: Barfield, Martin, Shepard. Yeah, Morgan Shepard missed the race again. You can see it. It's averaged 11 drivers per race for the last 5 events now. 55 guys have gone home.
5 days after the New Hampshire race, Tony Roper fails to qualify for the Truck Series race at Dover, one of 11 drivers sent home. His next attempt will be in 3 weeks at Texas. The O'Reilly 400 is the next to last race on the truck schedule, where Greg Biffle carries a 290-point lead over Mike Wallace for the championship. Roper qualifies 15th in the field, while 8 drivers are sent home, including Morgan Shepard and Carl Long. On lap 2, Roper misses a 10-truck pileup on the backstretch. On lap 26, he's in 17th, 18 seconds back of the lead and closing on a pack of trucks.
That is Tony Roper in the Mittler Brothers truck, and it is torn up. Now there's flames coming out of the underneath side, and the window net is not down. That is the signal to officials that he is okay. Meanwhile, the other truck involved for sure was the 43 of Steve Grissom. There may have been one other one. You can see parts all over the front straightaway. It's our second caution of this race.
Mike Mittler, whose pit stall is directly across from the accident scene, doesn't think the wreck is too bad. But Dean Roper, spotting for his son from the tower overlooking the track, doesn't hear Tony over the radio. He joins the family in rushing to the hospital. Emergency crews end up cutting a hole in the roof and lifting Roper out on a backboard. He's transported by ambulance out of the track. By the time he reaches Parkland Hospital, it's clear how serious the injury is. The impact has broken his neck and stopped the flow of blood to his brain. He's breathing with the help of a respirator.
The weekend in racing began with tragedy. NASCAR Truck Series driver Tony Roper suffered fatal injuries during Friday's O'Reilly 400 in Fort Worth after a head-on crash into the wall at Texas Motor Speedway. Roper was trying to maneuver through traffic when he touched another truck and lost control on the 32nd lap of the event. He passed away on Saturday, the first fatality in the 3.5-year history of the track.
At 11:55 a.m. the next day, Roper dies at age 35. While not a basilar skull fracture as in Petty and Irwin, the impact is similar in speed and angle, and the injury is similar to Scott Baker's fatal injury at the ARCA race at Toledo back in June. Roper's death is another shock of reality to the NASCAR community. A third different driver is killed from a head-on impact with the outside wall. This time, it's not at New Hampshire, and not during practice. The issue is now clearly more than a track with a treacherous turn. It is something that could happen anywhere, at any time, to any driver. While this makes Roper's death perhaps the most critical of the three, it is nevertheless overlooked. Because the very next day, this happens.
3 Chevrolets on the final lap at Talladega. $2.7 million and $1 million bonus for Dale Earnhardt if he can hang on. The no-ball 5 contender, Mr. Restricted Place, Dale Earnhardt comes down and will take his 10th career victory at Talladega.
3 days after Earnhardt's win, Tony Roper's memorial service is held in the gymnasium at the Fairgrove High School, where Roper graduated in 1983. More than 600 people attend. In the days that follow, Roper's website receives more than 1,600 messages and emails, so many that the webmaster has to start a third message board. He wasn't ever going to make Cup, and he had resigned himself to that, says Tony's uncle Dale Roper. But like movie stars, very few make it at the very top level. But you can still make a very good living by being a supporting actor.
His racing families, past and present, converged on his hometown of Fairgrove, Missouri, to say goodbye. In all, over 3,000 people paid their respects. Tony Roper was well liked, and he was well remembered. At the funeral, his wife Michelle bravely addressed us and reminded, Tony always saw the best in everything, and Tony Roper loved everyone. Thanks, Tony, for sharing your life with so many of us.
A week after Roper's accident, the Busch Series Ladies Association distributes decals in memory of Roper that run on the Busch Series cars at Rockingham, then again for the Truck Series finale at Fontana. The Mittler team doesn't run that week and returns for the 2001 season opener at Daytona. Larry Gunselman debuts the new truck number 63. In this race and in each one for the next 17 years, every one of Mittler's trucks will carry Roper's name. There is no doubt in my mind that he would have been a superstar as a crew chief, says Mittler. He had the knowledge and the work ethic. On October 22nd, Kyle and Patty Petty found the Victory Junction Gang Camp. It's the 7th in an international network of hole-in-the-wall camps which serve children with life-threatening illnesses. Located in Level Cross on property donated by Richard and Linda Petty, the completed facility features a large building that resembles Adam's colorful spree car. The next day, Tony Roper is laid to rest in Fairgrove. By season's end, Kyle makes 2 more Cup attempts, this time at Adams number 45. He makes the show at Martinsville and finishes 31st, then misses the field at Homestead. Both times, he runs the Pontiac that was brought to Charlotte, leaving Adams Chevrolet in the shop. Kyle's next attempt will be in a Dodge for the 2001 Daytona 500. Also among the Dodges will be a rookie, Jason Leffler, in the Chip Ganassi number 01. With Bell South merged into Tech Firm Singular, the team Leffler will drive for will be completely unrecognizable from the one Irwin drove just 7 months earlier. Over the offseason, NASCAR makes no new mandates regarding driver safety. While the stuck throttle issue has been addressed without being acknowledged, the rise in basilar skull fractures has not. On January 13, 2001, during preseason testing at Daytona, others take the initiative. A consultant speaks to Ford drivers, suggesting changes to their seatbelt systems in the Hans device, even offering to pay the bill for any driver wanting to order a Hans. Among the few who pick up this offer are Ricky Craven and rookie Andy Houston, now teammates at PPI Motorsports. Ford also holds a meeting with Dr. Robert Hubbard, the professor of biomedical design research who is part of developing the Hans. He states that both Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin Jr. could have survived their accidents if they used his device. Despite these rumblings, NASCAR is still reluctant to mandate the Hans, and Mike Helton states he doesn't plan on making a decision for a few weeks. We are not in a position today to make any changes, he says on January 30th. We just haven't seen anything yet that's not got something with it that gives us concern. Larry Woody, a veteran writer for the Tennessean, expresses his frustration over a lack of response by NASCAR. All the talk and attention that swirled around the issue of NASCAR safety last year seems to have cooled, unfortunately. It shouldn't take another racetrack tragedy to refocus attention on the matter. Efforts shouldn't lag in trying to find ways to build safer track walls, reliable ways to prevent stuck throttles, dependable helmets and harnesses. What were sizzling issues in the wake of last year's driver fatalities seems to have been all but forgotten amid the excitement swirling around the start of a new season and the attendant Daytona 500 Dazzle. Woody's article goes to print on February 6, 2001, just 12 days before the 43rd Daytona 500. It falls on deaf ears.
This is undoubtedly one of the toughest announcements that I've ever personally had to make. But after the accident and turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
Over the last 2 decades, NASCAR has advanced the narrative that today's push for safety began with these words. An unthinkable tragedy followed by unprecedented action, creating a sport made better by lessons learned and measures taken. The Hans device, safer barriers, the car of tomorrow. Earnhardt's legend is allowed for this. When we lost the Intimidator, the tragedy was already so massive in scale, a larger-than-life driver dying in the sport's biggest race from a seemingly ordinary accident. But the more we've replayed it in our collective memory, it's grown impossibly larger. It's now treated as though free from context, separate and apart from the 3 clear warnings that came before it. To this day, NASCAR continues to have a hard time dealing with the harshest realities of its sport. At the NASCAR Hall of Fame, the only monument to the 82 drivers who have died at NASCAR's sanctioned competition is a copy of the Earnhardt Report under glass, 1 volume open to the first page, its statement of facts laying out nothing more than the story we already know. It's as if no other driver had ever died in all of NASCAR history. But to deny history this way is to be doomed to repeat it, and that is what happened on February 18, 2001. It happened again on October 4th. Blaze Alexander, once a development driver for Team Sabco, collides with Kerry Earnhardt while battling for the lead at Charlotte. Alexander slams the wall nearly head-on, practically identical to the crash that killed Tony Roper less than a year earlier. It's just as identical in outcome. Alexander dies at 25. While the death happens in ARCA, it is this accident, and not the 4 before it, that finally convinces NASCAR to mandate the Hans device.
I have a picture hanging up in my office. It shows Robert Yates putting on the 28 jacket on Kenny. I knew that all the work and all the sacrifices we had made, everything was paid in full. Just right there on that moment. It was the great experience of my life. It wasn't a race that he'd won or a qualifying that he had set down or anything else. It was just watching Robert Yates put that 28 jacket on Kenny.
What do you remember the most?
His enthusiasm, everything. His desire, his smile, his touch, everything.
The throw looks like this. Todd Kuhn in a Chevrolet, the 20, and the great veteran Dean Roper from Missouri and the Mueller brothers, 89.